November 8, 1942. Richmond, California. The air smells of salt, steel, and fresh paint as dawn rips up over the bay. Shipyard number 2 of Henry Kaiser's growing empire doesn't sleep much anymore, not since America's merchant fleet began bleeding under German torpedoes. In the shadows of cranes taller than church spires, sparks spit from arcs that sound like angry insects. Everything hums, grinds, moves. In the middle of that maelstrom of sound and light, a man in a hard hat and windbreaker walks fast enough to force others to move aside. 59 years old, a little paunch over the welder's denim, Henry J. Kaiser carries a notebook instead of a blueprint. He doesn't sketch, he commands. He stops by a section foreman who's arguing with a younger steelworker over alignment plates. The foreman's voice is lost in the din, but Kaiser's is not. Get her right the first time. We're not redoing perfection. Then, loud enough for a passing group of women welders to hear it, we've got 4 days to float her, gentlemen, and ladies. Let's beat gravity. Somewhere behind that dry, impossible challenge sits a keel section freshly set onto blocks. A nameplate taped to the template reads SS Robert E. Peary. Cargo ship, type EC2, SC1. One of the standard Liberty hulls, designed by Britain, adapted by the United States, and multiplied by Kaiser the way storms multiply raindrops. But this one will be different, not because of what it carries, but because of how quickly it will breathe air. Out by the assembly sheds, a young welder named Evelyn Red Whitaker wipes her forehead under a leather cap, the cut of her overalls shapeless and proud. Only a few months before, she'd been serving coffee in a diner in Sacramento. Now, she's fusing sheet steel so precisely that inspectors think they're staring at one continuous slab. They said you couldn't weld ships like this, she shouts over the rattle of grinders. Kaiser says you can if you do it clean. The torch burns pale blue, diffraction in every droplet of sweat. Beyond her, forklifts carrying prefabricated hull panels move like insects along marked tracks. Prefab sections come together with an efficiency that makes shipbuilders from the old yard sneer. Real shipwrights, they said, cut and fitted by eye, hammered frames flush, and gave hulls their lines by hand. You don't build ships like jigsaw puzzles. You gently raise them from chaos. But Kaiser's answer is written in concrete and fire: Liberty ships are not fine yachts, they're tools for war. The same philosophy that built dams and bridges now builds vessels faster than the sea can count them. Out in the bay, the Liberty ships already launched sit anchor down, dull gray hulls lined like dominoes, a silent convoy waiting for paint and orders. The last one from this yard, the Joseph McKenna, took 10 days. The one before that, the John Welsh, took 9. This one will need 4 days and 15 hours, or the world won't believe Kaiser again. At noon, the shipyard whistle shrieks, men pour out of the cafeteria tents, cups of coffee in one hand, sandwiches in the other. A short man in overalls, John Brennan, chief welding foreman, checks his pocket watch and squints at the big clock outside the fabrication hall. He knows every minute is kindling for the fire Henry Kaiser lights every morning. Every lost bolt, every slow lift, is the difference between a reputation and a myth. He turns to a group of women at welding tables, Rosie the riveters before anyone calls them that. We're going to light her off Thursday morning, he hollers, voice raw from smoke. That's less than a weekend, folks. Every plate that fits today saves blood in the Atlantic next week. Heads nod. Torches flare. Riveters return to the chaotic rhythm that sounds like music if you stand back far enough. In Washington, nobody has quite decided if they should cheer or laugh. The Maritime Commission counts hulls but doesn't count miracles. The British, bleeding under U-boat attack, send telegrams that read more like prayers. We need 70 new freighters per month, one says bluntly. That's your part of winning this war. By dusk, the sky above Richmond looks like a forge. The bay's horizon reflects glowing dots, arc lamps, welds, heat rippling above steel. At the edge of the slipway, Kaiser stands with his operations chief, a tall engineer named Clay Bedford. They talk numbers: 125 sections, 230,000 rivets, 1,500 linear feet of welding seams. We're teaching time a lesson, Kaiser says, his voice low, like a man explaining something obvious. Bedford smiles, tired but infectious. If we finish, they won't call us crazy anymore. Kaiser grins back. If we finish, they'll call us late. The shipyard clock strikes 2200 hours, the first day fading into smoke. The hull sections, massive, numbered, braced, begin to slide down the line. Crews swarm them, sparks climbing under boots like inverted rainfall. The cranes, slow and elegant as prehistoric birds, lower bulkheads into the keel matrix. The sound of metal on metal is sharper in the night, closer to heartbeat rhythm. Somewhere over the radio, a big band song bleeds from a canteen speaker, tinny and proud. By midnight, the maritime superintendent stands on catwalk 3, scribbling notes under his hard hat. The keel plate, 177 feet long, is laid, aligned, and trued. Sections 2 through 16 will begin prefit at daybreak. The rest are traveling by truck from the prefab plant upriver. More than 1,200 men and women work under floodlights that turn faces ghost white. Somewhere among them, a small cardboard sign turns in the breeze, pinned to a warehouse wall. It says, 4 days or bust. 4 days. 15 hours. To build not a model, not a symbol, but a living ship, one to sail the supply arteries between New York and Belfast, between San Francisco and Guadalcanal. Torpedoes are waiting across every horizon, but Henry Kaiser's machine means there will always be another freighter, another cargo, another flag to raise. Out on the cold water, a dockhand watches the bay lights shim. November 9, 1942. 5:20 hours. The yard wakes before the sun. Fog hangs in the slips like breath, laced with the metallic taste of grinding wheels. Work lights burn through it, turning cranes into looming skeletons. The SS Robert E. Peary's spine, laid just 30 hours ago, is already half-skinned, her plates bolted and welded by crews moving with the precision of an orchestra that learned to read its own music on the fly. Henry Kaiser is everywhere and nowhere, 1 minute walking the deck scaffolds, next pacing the fabricating bay with a cigarette he never lights. He isn't a shipbuilder by pedigree, he built dams, roads, dreams that required dynamite and deadlines. But in this war, instead of pouring concrete, he's pouring ships. And this challenge, has become legend before the paint even dries. Every minute we save now saves a convoy later, Kaiser says into the cold air. The men nearby stop long enough to hear the rhythm, not just the meaning. They nod and swing arcs again, sparks leap off steel like fireflies swallowed by dawn. Across the slipway, a blackboard tall as a man lists the schedule, one chalked column for each shift, 47 hours to hull closure, 63 to deck layover, 76 to hatch installation, 84 to launch platform prep. The supervisor stares at it like scripture. In the prefab yard, sections arrive by truck, big angular beasts riding flatbeds, numbers stenciled on in chalk, number 12 stern section, number 7 mid-deck, number 4 forepeak. Drivers roar up, dump, reverse. Crane operators, thick-necked and sharp-eyed, swing loads with inches to spare, dropping them into the flurry of welding torches. Each section carries the ghost of its twin half a continent away, Oregon, Maine, Maryland, yards all building from the same modular mold. A Liberty ship is not a design, it's a principle, built from interchangeable faith in repetition. By mid-morning, the cafeteria smells like coffee, machine oil, and optimism. You hear what Kaiser said. One riveter laughs between bites of a sandwich, eyes red with no sleep. He's setting records, 'cause he's too stubborn to check the clock. A woman across the table grins, peeling off her gloves. Good. The U-boats don't check clocks either. At shipway level, the Peary silhouette begins to grow real form, bulkheads like ribs under skin. Foreman barks section numbers over the noise. Welding leads snake across the ground in tangled loops, a crane's hoist rumbles skyward with another steel wall. A half-dozen welders stand along a girder, synchronized arcs tracing the seams, the smell of ozone sharper than salt. Above them, the hull scaffolds shake as men drag ton-sized panels into line. Someone yells, higher by 6, and the crane obeys, steel meeting steel like a handshake sealed with flame. Across the yard, supervisors keep notebooks of problems that don't exist 10 minutes later. A rivet shipment comes late, borrowed from yard No. A generator overloads, replaced by a fleet mechanic before Kaiser hears about it. The rhythm becomes madness that works. One man mutters, "We're not building a ship, we're building a rumor we'll have to live up to." By the second night, fatigue tightens its jaws. The night shift marches in, lunchboxes clanking against their belts, teeth chattering in the cold. A new sound enters the air, the rasp of grinders trimming welds so clean they reflect the arc light. Supervisors log percentages, the hull sits at 60% joined and watertight. Above it, floodlights burn white through the mist, giving the half-built ship an eerie halo. The Peary's prow thrusts toward the bay like she already knows her course. In the plating bay, a welder named Joe Tavares checks his torch tip, listening for the hiss to come even and strong. He's been at it 16 hours, eyes bloodshot behind his goggles, mouth dry. But every spark he throws down feels bigger than sleep. His brother died on the Jonathan Holt, torpedoed mid-Atlantic. Joe joins the seams with the same neat steadiness used for signatures. If she floats, he's with her, he says softly before clicking the striker again. Henry Kaiser stops by just before midnight, coat collar turned up, hair soaked in fog. He taps a railing with his knuckle and studies the glowing hull. 56 hours in, he murmurs to Clay Bedford beside him. Half the ship's alive already. Bedford nods, flipping pages on his clipboard. And 4,000 people know every nut and weld by name. Kaiser chuckles, a sound half cough, half satisfaction. That's the secret. Build the people, and they'll build the ships. The Peary's stern finishes alignment a little before dawn, welds cooling in the fog. The Navy inspector, drafted from San Francisco's Bureau of Ships, stands dumbstruck on the scaffolding, running a gloved hand over seams that look machine-perfect. You realize, he tells the foreman, you're rewriting the textbooks. The foreman laughs without looking up. Only the ones that were wrong. By noon on the third day, the Peary looks like more than promise, she's a full hull, black primer catching the California sun. A whistle cuts through the yard, sections 18 and 19 have locked, the watertight test holds, and the keel cranes retract. Onlookers cheer, but no one lingers. The target hasn't changed, for days, 15 hours, and every cheer feels like a pause the schedule can't afford. In the command shack, Kaiser traces a finger across the construction chart and taps the red line marked launch. Morning of the 12th, he says aloud. Then, under his breath, or sooner, if I have anything to say about it. That night, the Richmond shipyard doesn't close. It glows. 1,000 welders move in shifts under cranes that look like cathedral vaults. A radio man reports from a scaffold to a war correspondent down below. She's going up faster than we can write it down, he shouts. Somewhere, an electric siren wails, shift change, and floodlights switch to full glare. The Peary's hull gleams silver and wet, smoke curling off it like breath. Out in the bay, a tug waits, engines idling. Its skipper sips from a tin cup and peers into the fog where the shipyard roars unseen. He shakes his head in disbelief. They said you can't rush a ship, he mutters to himself. Guess nobody told Henry Kaiser. November 12, 1942. Richmond Shipyard No. 2 stands electric in the gray dawn. The bay is smooth, copper-colored, the fog still hugging the piers like an audience waiting for the curtain to lift. You can taste the resin and the spent ozone in the air, the smell of ships being born. At slipway No. 2, men and women line the scaffold rails 6 deep, their overalls stained, their gloves stiff with sweat and salt. They have built something absurd, impossible, and they're so tired they have no idea what day it is. But they know this, 4 days and 15 hours ago, nothing in that slip existed but keel blocks and a pencil line. Now the SS Robert E. Peary towers above them, bow gleaming under a skin of gray primer. Her name, stenciled fresh across black steel, seems to dare anyone to doubt her. 56 sections joined, 1 section every 2 hours. Welds neat enough to read light by. Deck equipment rigged and tested. A ship that shouldn't, by every rule of traditional shipbuilding, be a ship yet. Henry Kaiser arrives just after 0700, stepping briskly through a crowd of exhausted workers. His hat brim drips from the night's mist, his face is flushed with pride disguised as focus. He nods to a crane operator, pats the scaffolding like it's a friend. How's she holding? He asks no one in particular. Like a promise, someone answers. He grins. Clay Bedford meets him midway down the pier with a clipboard so thick it looks like a plank. Final checks clear, Bedford says. She's sealed and trimmed, dry runs good. Tugs are ready. Kaiser barely hears him, he's looking at the crowd. 10,000 people, maybe more, packed along the waterfront, drawn from every yard shift, from nearby Richmond homes, from offices and war plants that heard about the ship that doesn't believe in time. The whistle blows at 8 o'clock sharp. The yard stops as if struck silent. The ship's band, borrowed from the U.S. Navy, struggles into tune beside a painted wooden platform where a christening bottle waits under white cloth. Mrs. Edward J. Peary, widow of the Arctic explorer, stands ready to christen the ship bearing his name. She looks up at the steel mountain, her gloved hands trembling slightly. Kaiser steps beside her, voice low but steady. "Ma'am, when I told Washington we'd launch her in 4 days, they laughed. You get to wipe that off the record." She smiles, raises her arm, and swings. The bottle shatters, milk-white spray across the bow. "I christen thee Robert E. Peary. Godspeed." The signalman waves his flag. Motors whine, hydraulic wedges hiss free. For a heartbeat, the 10,000-ton hull seems to freeze on its wooden cradle, a sovereign moment between gravity and faith. Then, with a deep, rolling groan, the Peary moves. She slides slow at first, then faster, high heels on greased timbers, the bay drawing her like breath. There's a thunder of timbers setting free, cables snapping loose, cheers tumbling into one great roar. When the hull hits the water, spray erupts 30 feet high, raining back over the crowd. Women laugh, men throw hats, welders slap each other's backs so hard their gloves squeak. The SS Robert E. Peary floats solid, alive, utterly real. Anchors ready, seams tight, engines waiting in the fitting basin to be installed. For days, 15 hours, some 23 minutes. A photographer catches the shot, Kaiser on the launch rail, raincoat half open, hand raised like a conductor ending a symphony. Behind him, the Peary sits perfect on her lines, a newborn against the gray water. In Washington that afternoon, the Associated Press flash reaches the Maritime Commission offices on Independence Avenue. A secretary reads it twice before interrupting the directors' meeting. "They did it," she says aloud, voice crisp with disbelief. For days, 15 hours, 29 minutes keel to launch. For a moment, no one speaks. Then laughter. Then applause. In the corner office, a British liaison lights a cigarette and mutters, "God bless the Americans and their lunatics." Back in Richmond, the welders throw an impromptu parade between sheds. There's only one banner, painted by hand and dripping with rain, "We beat time." Kaiser visits the mess tent at dusk, swallowing coffee black and scalding. The table shakes under the laughter of men and women who haven't slept since Tuesday. Evelyn Whittaker, torch hand first class, drops onto a bench beside him, wipes soot from her cheek, and jokes, "What's next, Mr. Kaiser? 3 days." Kaiser chuckles. "Next," he says, leaning back. "Next, we do it every week until there's more liberty in the sea than fear." Outside, floodlights wash across the Peary's hull. The weld seams, burnished smooth, look like silver veins. Across the bay, a Liberty convoy passes under the Golden Gate, silhouettes black against the fiery sky, as if acknowledging a new sister joining the fight. For a few minutes, the noise in the yard softens to something like reverence. A ship that began as an impossible bet now floats among her kin, each one part of a chain reaching across oceans still at war. Tomorrow, the numbers will start again, hulls laid, ships launched, gallons of steel poured into the Atlantic. But tonight, engineers and riveters, draftsmen and welders stand shoulder to shoulder, listening to the soft slap of waves against a hull born from speed, sweat, and a man's refusal to accept slow. Henry Kaiser watches the shipyard lights blur in the mist and says quietly to Bedford, "For days, Clay. Let's make it ordinary." Winter 1942 becomes spring, and the hum from the Richmond waterfront never stops. Where crates once stacked high with scrap, hull sections now line the sky like ribs of sleeping giants. The record-breaking Robert E. Peary has left her cradle and joined the Pacific convoys, and yet the welders still talk about her as if she's theirs, because she is. For them, she proved an idea no admiral or architect had dared to wager the war on, that ships could be born not one by one, but by the thousand, built from belief, steel, and a stopwatch. By February, Liberty ships slide into water from coastal yards like a pilgrimage, Baltimore, Portland, Vancouver, Astoria, Mobile, Savannah, all singing the same mechanical chorus. Each vessel carries the common name, Liberty, each one built from 250,000 parts and 70 prefabricated sections, a kit that could be assembled faster than submarines could sink it. Rivets give way to welding arcs. Shipwrights become production engineers. Henry Kaiser's dream, industrial speed serving human survival, finds rhythm in 1,000 shifts that never sleep. At the Richmond yard, the shift bell replaces the sunrise, the yard whistle becomes the anthem of victory still gestating. Women in denim overalls carry lunch pails past posters shouting, "The Liberty ship is victory's bridge." The cafeteria chalkboard counts hulls launched, 42, 93, 207. Foreman Brennan scratches off the numbers every few days and writes higher. Evelyn Whitaker welds at Station 3, same goggles, same rhythm, moving section by section under the keening of the cranes. She can no longer remember the first ship she worked on, but she remembers the Peary, the disbelief, the exhaustion, the smell of wet steel on launch morning. For days, she says sometimes to the girl next to her, and laughs like someone remembering a campfire story that happened to be true. U-boats still claw at the Atlantic, steel wolves hunting convoys by sonar and moonlight. Every ship lost gets replaced by 2 more from Kaiser's yards. Convoy escorts cluster tight, sonar pings rising and falling through gray seas thick with oil and debris. British captains watch their cargo lists and mutter thanks to unknown yards on the other side of the world. A ship named Samson, laid at Richmond, delivers tanks to North Africa. John Bascom hauls munitions to Sicily. Stephen Hopkins will later fight a German raider to mutual destruction mid-ocean, her gunners earning the first Merchant Marine Medal of Honor. They are blunt-nosed, slow, unromantic, but they keep the world alive. Washington's Maritime Commission prints the statistics like prayers. 15 million tons of cargo delivered. 1 Liberty ship every 2 days. Then 1 per day. Then 3. Henry Kaiser reads the bulletins in his Oakland office, cigarette smoke curling around his grin. He crosses out the prediction, victory in 1944 if shipping maintains current rates, and writes a single word beside it, exceeds. That summer, President Franklin D. Roosevelt tours the West Coast yards. At Richmond, women workers in headscarves yell over the drone of engines, waving their torches like miniature banners. FDR leans on the rail of the inspection platform and looks down at the half-built hull beneath him, a flat-bottomed steel box, shapeless, utilitarian. He calls it ugly. Kaiser laughs beside him, not offended. "Yes, sir," he says. "Ugly as sin. But she'll carry the Lord's work." Roosevelt tips his hat and says, "Then God rides in a Liberty ship." That line travels faster than any convoy. Within months, the phrase, "ugly duckling," becomes badge and banner. Newspapers print photographs of Liberty ships loading crated fighter planes and locomotives, decks stacked high with crates labeled Lend-Lease, Murmansk route. Soviet seamen, American sailors, British dockhands, all curse at the stubborn cranes and frozen hawsers that bind them together. On a Liverpool pier, one Navy correspondent writes, "They were never meant to be beautiful. They were meant to endure. They are the sound of democracy, hammered into shape." Back in Richmond, Kaiser adds a second yard, then a third, each bigger than a town. He builds daycare centers for working mothers, hospitals for the welders, cafeterias that serve 15,000 workers between shifts. For the first time in an American war, women welders wear their name tags without apology. Black and white workers draw pay side by side, and though it's not equality yet, it's closer than the country outside those gates. In their furnace-glow world of war steel, efficiency is the only color that matters. By 1944, Allied victory convoys shimmer across unbroken Atlantic routes. British sailors' folklore says Liberty ships have a soul forged by hurry and hope, they sail best when laden with coffee, trucks, and luck. In the Pacific, they deliver sea rations and bulldozers to Tarawa and the Marianas, load back with the wreckage of battles too fresh to tally. Crews chalk drawings on their gun houses, Rosie's Darling and Oakland Lady, and swap stories about the yard in California where ships fly off the ramp faster than rumors can cross the pier. November 1944. A calm afternoon in the Richmond Basin. The Peary's sister ships surround her at berth, streaked with rust and sun. A flag waves above the yard gate, Victory Fleet, built to last. Henry Kaiser, older now, slower in his gait but not his mind, watches a new launch from the upper platform, another Liberty hull sliding down the greased timbers into salt spray. Beside him, the same foreman who watched the Peary go says, "Think we'll ever build anything faster?" Kaiser shakes his head once, eyes on the horizon. "No need," he says quietly. "We already built time itself. We just taught it to float." The ship hits water, bells sound, a cheer rises, and for a moment, between the echo of steel and ocean, the war feels beatable because it is measurable. Because men and women with torches and blueprints decided to make salvation in 4-day segments. The tide pulls at the hull, turning it gently toward the open bay. Another Liberty ship slides past the yard and joins the waiting rows anchored in fog, each one stamped with Kaiser's defiant logic: freedom isn't a miracle, it's built.